You should see the first page of our coordinator training. So basically, just as a heads up, we've got some small changes, but no major earth-shattering changes for the good of the cause. So we're going to go ahead and get started. So I do have a highlighter cursor, so in case I need to move some things around, you'll be able to see that. All right, well, welcome everybody. Thank you for being here. Thank you for taking some time out of your day. I hope your air conditioning is working. It's going to be getting hot, but you probably already knew that. So let's get started. So this is for the final report. These are the documents that you may need, probably that you will need. Just a list of the appendices. Nothing really earth-shattering with that. This is the progress report, and there's some specifics that we'll be discussing, needing to work over on the progress report. We will be spending some time on what's called the final outcomes, and in this area, we need to make sure that we, in each of the 9 goals, you need to have something in here. Whether or not you spent local money or spent Perkins money, that's up to you. But each of these have to be identified as having some time and energy spent on this. The document should outline the activity as much as detail as possible as it pertains to your institution. We want some concise writing here. We don't need a book with a lot of fluff writing, but we do need the details, which is good. If the activity is not funded locally, hopefully you have either a Perkins dollar in the funding or a local, but 0 is not an option in those. The progress reports on each activity should include as much detail as possible and not just activity completed or equipment purchased. So what we want to know is what was completed, what were the results, how did the activity impact which Perkins program. So how many instructors, how many classes, how many students, what gains were measured. If you can qualify this and quantify it, that would be helpful. So if you completed the purchasing equipment in December, what are you going to do with it in March? What are you going to do with it in June? Who saw that? Who was helped by that? In this, you'll need to tie any Perkins professional development to a Perkins program, and the dollar amount on this report changes to match the amounts in your revisions and budget breakdown of expenses. In the hierarchy of importance, of accuracy of the dollar figures, this is fairly low, but it is helpful if you make changes to Appendix L or Appendix M that you also make the changes to Appendix I. That helps us go through and just be a little clearer. Next is Appendix L. So the important checkpoints here will be this final expenditure report. The next thing is all the figures in the body of this appendix should match Appendix M, which is the budgeted breakdown of expenses. You will have in this iteration of Appendix L, program income and expenses will be included. So you'll list program income, program expenses, and this is to be submitted with like an addendum with Appendix S. So if you did report income, we'll need to make sure that there's some kind of screenshot identifying that your income is being pushed back into CTE program. We'll have more details later. Oh, by the way, if you do have any questions via chat, Vera is monitoring those chat questions, and she'll be sharing those with me as they come up. So if you do have a chat question, just send it on the Skype, and we'll see if we can get that ironed out for you. Okay, now we're looking at Appendix M. So hopefully your revised budget amount 630 is any last revisions should be identified in this column to include possible actual expenses. Many schools choose to send in a revision with their actual expenses for some professional development, specifically equipment expenses, so that they can have the hard numbers rather than just the budgeted numbers here. But your budgeted breakdown of expenses is the form most used by your business office, hopefully. This can be changed or made more detailed as long as the amounts in the last 4 columns are correct and filled in. If you were to take this document and expand it for your financial office, there is several institutions that use this as a tracker for any equipment that's purchased. So each line item in each goal has its own through dates, and this is the date the equipment was encumbered for this specific piece of equipment. This is the date it was ordered. This is the date it showed up. So all that is tracked with a longer, more complicated version of Appendix M. But what you see here is what we need for the final report. The original budget column should not be changed once Connie signs that application, and should match the handwritten amounts on the first page of your application. The second column, obviously, when you send that in after 12/1, that shouldn't be altered after 12/1. The third column shouldn't be altered after 3/1, and the last column shouldn't be altered after 6/30. So if there are revisions, the second column is used anytime there are revisions affecting the budget amounts between goals greater than 5% of the goal amounts. This column may change several times before you turn in the reporting date. But one of the goals is not to change this column after that date. That helps us avoid some confusion. Another important point here is to use the real numbers, not to round up or round down the cents. Section B of the budgeted breakdown of expenses, in some cases, is forgotten sometimes, so hopefully we haven't had that recently, which is good. But this section can be a helpful tool if you're in ensuring that you are not over 5% of your administrative costs, which is down here, 50% for equipment, or 50% in wages for personnel. When working with these numbers that cannot be over a certain percentage, please use the exact numbers. Don't round down. Round down in your application, but don't round up. Same thing with wages and subscriptions. This is also the page where the preparer signs at the bottom of this page. You can't see it on here because it's just a screenshot, but the preparer will sign for the progress reports and for the final report. If Perkins funds are used for personnel in this top area over here, time and effort sheets must be submitted. We'll talk about that more later. Any questions yet? Say again.
The president's signatures on L&M?
On L&M, the question was asked whether or not the president's signature is on those. I believe the president's signature is on both. Pretty sure. I know it's on M. I'll check. Hang on. Yeah, the president's signature is on both Appendix L and Appendix M, along with the preparer's signature. Good question. Okay, so now we're looking at Appendix N, as in Nancy. So this screenshot is an example of best practice. We've got the writer references the original grant application with professional development appendix and the revised activity. If there are revisions, obviously the revision number would go in this column here. And the revised activity references the additional activities added to the professional development appendix. Just as a heads up with future applications, there were a few applications that came in this year that did not include KBOR led Perkins training. This should be something that's kind of a given in here, but it needs to be in the Appendix N for you to be able to spend Perkins money on travel and to get here. It's just as a side note. On Appendix P, so this is your equipment purchases between 500 and just under 5,000. The purpose of this document is to help your institution track accountability of these Perkins funded purchases. Tracking is useful for preventing loss, damage, or theft of these Perkins funded purchases. And this document will be helpful for inventory checks, or in case your school needs to file a police report, or if a tornado hits your school and you need to replace a lot of equipment. That's the purpose of these type of documents, so that you have each yearly purchased equipment all in one spot. Appendix Q is similar to Appendix P. The only addition we have is cost per unit and amount paid by Perkins, total cost. So it's possible that the total cost wasn't covered by Perkins funds, but you paid an amount of Perkins funds towards the total cost. So for instance, if a thing cost $10,000 and $2,000 of that was Perkins money, you would place $2,000 in this column, and the total cost of that item would be $10,000. That helps us to track how much that had the value of the item, but then again also how much Perkins dollars were attributed to that. So as a hint, make sure that you have, if you have not yet done so, make sure that you have requested Perkins tags to go on these items. That request, the Perkins request assignment form, is in the supplemental packet. We'll talk about that a little bit later. But again, this document is for tracking. We track all the Perkins tagged items on our database. That way, if there is a review that needs to occur, either a program review or if the feds come in and want to see some of that, that way we're helping you by helping these items stay tracked. On that final report, make sure that you do have a description of the equipment and then the serial number and the model number if available. Again, that's going to help us identify the documents or the equipment from other items. Any questions on chat? Okay, very good. So on the final narrative report, each year Connie gets to send in the consolidated annual report. We call it the CAR, and to do that, we peel things from your Appendix R, and then we consolidate that into the document. And so we've got some guidelines on how this is going to help us, help you, help us. So the sections of this report are copied into a Word document, and we'll talk about those guidelines next. So the final narrative report, please make sure that this is in a Word document or a Word equivalent so that we can edit it and pull from it. The first time that you identify your institution in that document, use the full approved institution name, and then bold the first time you use it. That helps us identify where that is. Also, using third-person narrative, the college did this, not we did this, or Bill and Susie went on a professional development opportunity. We don't need to know the names of anybody, but your school, yes. Do not use student, faculty, or staff names as you do this.
I'm going to just make one comment on that. Basically, and we understand that it takes time to put that together, and we appreciate that. You don't have to write us a book. Basically, what I'm having to report on is the results of the activities that the funds were expended on. So for X project, what happened with that is what we're having to submit. So just the short summary, and by doing the things that Tobe has outlined here, it really helps us, because if not, then our team has to go back through and edit everything. So if you can follow these guidelines, it will be greatly appreciated.
Yeah, and some best practices with this are if you instruct your faculty on what you expect to go into Appendix I in the final outcomes, that's a great starting point to build your Appendix R, is by pulling the narratives from the Appendix I. So if your instructors are doing a good job of quantifying and qualifying in Appendix I for the final outcomes, it'll make your job a lot easier by distilling that and pulling that into one document for the final narrative report. So again, which which activities impacted which programs, what was completed, what were the results, how many instructors did what in how many classes, how many students were affected, what gains were measured, even if there weren't gains measured and you wish that things had been better, that's also a good place to place this. I mean, we're not always looking at always the fluffy, happy stuff. We also want to know if something's fallen flat and if you need to get some technical assistance or maybe even add some more money to that specific program that might be failing.
And those of you, well, everyone, reporting special pops is one that we were lucky. You all did such a fantastic job on this last year that I did not have to go back and report anything else. But they really, you know, whatever you're doing with special pops, and those of you that had non-trad grants and integrating academics projects, if you be sure and report on those on the appropriate places as you go through there, that would really help us out.
Absolutely. And again, quantify if you can. Good points. All right, some more important guidelines here. Do not refer to another section. See section 1. That just takes a lot of time for us to pull. For you, it's a little easier to just cut and paste that in. So if you, yeah, that's pretty self-explanatory. Just write the narrative in both sections or cut and paste it in. Please do not use bullets or numbers. If you do that, we just have to remove them anyway.
It's HTML.
Yeah, because the way the car is uploaded is the HTML format. And then make sure you tell us how the grant benefited your students and your institutions. Again, qualify by how did it improve the quality, and quantify by how many programs, teachers, students were impacted. Okay, so Appendix S is program and expenses. If you had any income from the programs funded by Perkins Programs Improvement Grant, you must report that income, even if it wasn't significant or your expenses exceeded the income amount. If the income does exceed the expenses, a document must be submitted illustrating that the income was placed back into the Perkins Approved Program. So that could be a screenshot of your finance spreadsheet or some kind of document that shows that that money went back into the Perkins Approved Program. Okay, this is Appendix T, which is the secondary articulation agreement list. This could be a fairly extensive list depending on how much you do with the high schools. But again, just fill out as much as you can. This might be very similar to last year, and if that's the case, then just update the year and make sure that things are current. Appendix U, however, if you submit something for the post-secondary articulation to KBOR Academic Affairs, you don't need to resubmit, or you don't need to change the document to fit this format. It's already basically in this format. You just need to simply submit that same copy in place of Appendix U. If you want to put Appendix U at the top, that's even better for us. That way we know what's happening. But if you do that for Academic Affairs, just send us a copy of it. All right, Appendix V is in Victor. Advisory committee meeting dates. Each Perkins approved program must hold 2 advisory board meetings during the grant year. And this is how we're identifying. So make sure we have the zip code, program name, dates, minutes attached, notes. So Appendix W is those minutes. So each Perkins approved program must submit 1 set of minutes. This can be sent as a PDF file to reduce the file size. We'll talk more about how to submit those documents to us. But again, PDF file for this saves on some space. So time and effort. What we're looking at here is a semi-annual certification. So obviously you would change this unless you have someone working for you that's named Jane Doe, which I don't think you do. But don't change this one. This is only for the sections, the personnel that work 100% of the time. And then just put the through dates. Some important ones on here is to These are for folks that work on a single cost objective. Again, use this document only if 100% of that time is used and reported for state admin. An example, faculty funded by Perkins in teaching a CTE course. They use their first year, and if they are still 100% CTE, then this can be used on their roll down years. This report must be signed after the time period verified. So make sure that the date doesn't, this date right here can't be before that date there. So that's important. This time and effort sheet, this is for personnel activity reports. This is only the top part of a screenshot of the Appendix Y. The bottom part is another one of these sections and the signature area. Again, put the name, department, time period. You may have a local document that does this, and that local document may satisfy the elements of this document if it's approved. So if you have a document that's similar to this that you use, please send that to either Vera or me, and we will get that approved. And if it is approved, then you can just submit that document rather than having to double up and create two documents that say basically the same thing. So this is local basic grant and the non-federal funds. This is used for employees working on more than one cost objective. This can track by the hour or by the percentage. It should be signed by the employee and the supervisor after the time period worked. So again, your signature, the signature date and time, the signature date shouldn't happen before the time period expires. So if it can be signed just by the supervisor if the employee is unavailable. If you're doing an electronic signature, I believe that there may be a section for that. So if there's not, just communicate with both Vera and me if there's anything that deviates from what's actually on the sheet.
And I just want to clarify, if you're, the time and effort you've been submitting and the documentation, you don't need to change anything. If whatever you have been submitting is fine, so I don't want everybody to think they need to change something. But I know we have quite a few new coordinators this year and wanted to make sure we review time and effort. We're working with adult ed on this now, preparing for our visit. This is one of the easiest things, as Brustein always reminds us, to I'm going to say get people, but for Octane to identify, to have us full time and effort. So just clarification there.
Yeah, and again, to reiterate, if you're using something that's similar to this for your local institution, just forward that to either me or to Vera for approval, and that might suffice. If it's not, we'll let you know. But with your progress reports, this is also something that's turned in there. All right, so the quality assurance rubric has changed a little bit. Each year we tweak this a little bit more. So these are the ways that we track how your institution progresses throughout the year. We understand that some of these areas in these columns are not in your control as a Perkins coordinator, but most of them are in your hands. So if you're unsure about how to do something Perkins related, just send a message to Connie, to Vera, or to me, and we can help you get through that. I think we have a question.
We have a question on the chat. It says, so for anyone's salary that is being paid through Perkins needs to complete both Appendix X and Y.
Say that again.
One salary that is being paid through Perkins needs to be completed both Appendix X and Y.
No, it'll be one or the other. So if you've got someone that's working 100% of their time with Perkins effort, you should use Appendix X. If someone is doing more of their workload is Perkins and some other cost objective, that's when you would use Appendix Y. I hope that answered that question. If not, just shoot us another chat. Discuss it somewhere. So if you're unsure about something here, just contact Connie, Vera, or me. And another thing is to get familiar with the Perkins Handbook, get familiar with the Edgar Handbook, and attend Perkins-oriented trainings. You should be the Perkins subject matter expert at your institution. If you are not, then we need to make it so that you are the subject matter expert there. Like Yoda says, there is no try, either do or do not. All right, so this is a screenshot of the Workforce Development Perkins Grant page of the KBOR website. So if you're not familiar with this, if you go to kansasregents.org, that's the home page. Over here under Workforce Development, if you hover over that, a drop down will show up that says Perkins Grants. If you click on the Perkins Grants area, you will see this. This is the top section of that page, which has documents, either PDF or Word docs or Excel sheets that you would need to have for your reporting. Next page is just more of the same. So this is also on that same page. You can see the application packets, the supplemental packet is what you'll maybe have seen. Obviously, you'll need the final report packet. Okay, as for the submission process, so you'll be getting, hopefully you email these as a PDF to your liaison, which is either Vera or me. And we're going to be setting up a Dropbox for this, and I believe Connie is setting that up currently. It's not quite done yet, but the invites to that are coming. Again, Appendix R, please send that as a Word document, and that's a narrative. Again, we pulled that to create that CAR document. And if you need Perkins tags for any equipment or software that costs more than $5,000, you need to request that now or have already requested that, and maybe even place those cute little stickers on your cute little piece of equipment. So if that's not been done, please contact your liaison. We'll get that squared away, get that to you. All right, your final report, they are due August 17th, close of business, 2018. If there is some catastrophic issue that's going to keep you from doing that, just communicate with us. If there's extenuating circumstances preventing you from meeting that deadline, communication. These are some relevant phone numbers and emails for you, Connie, me, Vera, April, Sherman. So if you have any questions, these are the folks that you should aim those questions at. Sorry for the dangling participle. Do you have any questions over chat? Okay, very good. Does anybody have any questions over voice that would like to address? Okay, with that, yeah, if you have any questions, just give us a call. You've got our phone numbers now, and we will be available for those. So you guys get back some time this morning. So have a great day. I'll see you later.